Before we go into the podcast, I want to just talk about a business that I've set up with my friend George. It is called the Podcast Introduction Group. So if you want to join and be able to be featured on 24 to 48 podcasts to be able to reach an amazing audience, this is the place you need to go to. Podcast, being a guest on podcasts, is automatically establishing you as an authority and is able to build your personal and professional brand. We handpick of a bank of podcasters that we have to be able to grow your business and brand. We do 100% of everything that needs to be done by my team. You do not need to lift a finger. You are able to expose yourself to new and relevant markets by going on other people's podcasts. You also are able to create brand loyalty. People will love listening to you and coming back to your products or services, and it's able to increase your revenue. So if you want to be able to get involved, you can sign up quickly, registered with an account manager. There's an onboarding call where we target the podcasts that you want to be on, the type that you want, whether it's entrepreneurship, business, health, fitness, whatever it is. We then match you to those podcasts and you can start your journey. We have regular catch-ups with our account managers, and Google ranks you when people search for you. So when people are searching for you, you're able to see your podcasts at the top of the list. So if you're interested in being a podcast guest on multiple podcasts, we are the place to go. If you go to podcastintroduction.com and go and register your details, we will have a quick call with you, match your podcast that you want to be on, and we can then start this process ASAP. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. Back onto the podcast then. Just one last thing before we go into the podcast. I just wanted to talk to you about the fact that I have a YouTube channel that has been going for quite some time, and I am recording and releasing all of my interviews with some short videos as well on YouTube. So please do check it out. YouTube on Absolute Business Mindset. You'll see a bunch of interviews there, all the longer format interviews and some short videos as well. So please enjoy that. And here goes with the podcast interview. This is the Absolute Business Mindset podcast, created and hosted by Mark Hayward. This podcast will interview entrepreneurs, business owners, and people in their careers. We will delve into their journey to success, key life milestones, and go deep into their area of expertise. Get ready to learn from others' successes and failures. Today we have Elizabeth Pampalone, who's a marketing minimalist. Hello, Elizabeth. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm very well. Thank you very much for joining me today. So we're going to have a good discussion about your career, your businesses, where you're looking to go into the future. The first question that I've started to ask people is, the podcast is called Absolute Business Mindset. But the first question is, what does the business mindset mean to you?
Well, I think a business mindset is when you actually focus on creating not just wealth and prosperity for yourself so that you can provide even other jobs, but also you're focused on providing a really good service or product that is helping the world in some way.
Lovely. That's a very nice answer. Thank you very much for that. I'm going to do a collection of all these answers eventually. Once I've done about 100 of them, I'll because we do get some really good answers, and that was a really good answer. Giving to other people, fantastic. Education. So there wasn't a great deal of detail that I could find on your education, but when I looked on your website, and this is what is actually fascinating, it is actually that you were homeschooled. And I say that fascinating because I went to a generic, like a grammar school. I went to a normal school. Had the traditional in the UK school, sixth form, 16 to 18, and then degree. It was all very standard. But tell me a little bit about why your parents chose to homeschool you. And I understand you're a bit of a warrior now for homeschooling.
Yeah, I've actually been on some podcasts about homeschooling in the past. But I was homeschooled from the kindergarten age, like 6 years old, all the way through age 17 when I graduated high school.
Okay.
So the whole time I was homeschooled. And I also have 4 siblings that are all younger, and they were all also homeschooled. So when my parents first started with me, my mom really did not want to send me to kindergarten. She was, I was her first baby and she didn't want to send me off. And so she said, well, I'm going to try this. And my dad agreed. And they said, well, we'll try it for 1 year. And then it was first grade. Well, first grade can't be that hard. We'll try it for another year. And then my sister came on and, well, we've already done kindergarten, so it should be easy. And so then as the years went by, it was literally year by year by year. And then when we came to high school, both of my parents, they actually asked me, do you want to go to high school? Like, do you want to do this? And by that time, I didn't know anything different. So I said, heck no. And I stayed there and did that until, I graduated high school. I have a degree from college or a high school in Maine, where I actually lived in Ohio. So you can get a high school diploma from another state even. And then I went to a local college and I got a programming degree as a computer programmer.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So we have in the UK something called the national curriculum, which is basically the what you need to study to be able to do your exams at 16 and 18. Did your parents follow that structure? They follow that structure. They didn't create their own sort of curriculum.
Right. And there's a lot of curriculum companies in the United States that basically create this is what a first grader should know about math. Yeah. And then you go through that book. And there's 20, 30, 40 different companies that create these. Okay. So you really have a choice of saying, oh, well, this math book was better for my child and the way they learned, so I'm going to use this series for them. But this other child might need something different. So, but it's still that same developmentally and just grade level. This is where you should be. And each year we had to be evaluated by an actual teacher or principal in a school. And they had to sign off and say, yeah, they know these things. So.
Wow. And why have you become a bit of a warrior? Do you now homeschool your children?
So I don't have children yet, but a lot of my friends are starting down that path. And I kind of want to get show hey, this is a success story. I've been very successful in my life. And I think that homeschooling for me really gave me a confidence that I saw some of my peers not have.
It's really interesting because did you find that creating sort of friendships and bonds with people, because obviously it's I say normal school, normal's a terrible word, but you know what I mean, like a traditional school, you're involved with lots of clubs, sports, and lots of interaction with other groups. Not to delve too deeply, but it just did you find that because obviously you're having different experiences, you obviously had your siblings, but what's your sort of experience with socialization?
So I was really in love with old time radio and radio from the 1940s and 50s. Okay. And there was a local station that played these things on the radio. So every day when we would make lunch in our kitchen, we would listen to these things. And I got to the point where I was calling the radio station, requesting songs and, trying to talk to these people. And then we would have conversations when I would call and request. And one of the things that I thought was fascinating, hold on, sorry. There was a beep noise. I don't know what it was. That they would actually say, well, come out and be on the radio. And I was 12, 13 years old. So It was really neat to get those kinds of experiences. We also wrote for the newspaper for a long time. Wow. And, we did that kind of stuff that my sister and I, that other school kids, we would go during the middle of the day. We were actually kind of ambassadors to a museum. For the newspaper, the local newspaper, they had a tiff with the local newspaper and they sent us out there because they didn't want to send any of their reporters. And we did this whole, story on their new children's museum and all this stuff. But it was these really strange and varied experiences that none of my friends ever talked about having or never had the opportunity to experience. We went to festivals during the middle of the week. We did all these things. So it was really, really interesting and fascinating.
And I've got so much respect for your parents, your mum and your dad for doing that, because we had in the UK and the US as well with COVID, we had an insight to homeschooling. It's hard. It's really, really hard.
It is. And I'm grateful to my parents that they did that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's talk about your first job, which you shared with me was a library shelver. So how did you get that job? And just talk us around exactly, or obviously you were loading books, but like, how did it come about, and how long did you stay for?
So I was there for several years. And I think I was there from 16 to 22, 20, 20, 16 to 20, because I graduated college at 20 something years old. Hold on. I think my fire alarm has battery issues right when I'm doing a podcast, of course, right? And of course, my little pug doesn't like that too much. But yeah, so I stayed there for several years, and I was able to work there while I was graduating college and finishing high school. And I really loved the library. It was one of my most favorite things to do. I read a lot more during that period, and I was exposed to a lot of just different people in general, but also different books as well.
Fantastic. Right, we're going to jump forward a little bit to your first business. Now, usually I'm quite prepared, and I know other people's experiences in careers and businesses before their current business, but it's a little bit of a mystery to me. So tell me about the business that you started in 2007.
Well, I was working in a hostess capacity as like a dinner hostess, and I decided that I needed to do something else, but I was overqualified for a lot of jobs because I had this programming degree, but I was underqualified for a lot of things as well because it wasn't a very extensive degree. So I found myself kind of in the middle. My mom said, you probably need to just make a job. You need to just create something and make a job. So I decided that I really liked working with older people, like people in their 50s and 60s. And that was kind of where I gravitated towards even as a younger kid. And so I said, I like old people and I like computers. So I started calling the local senior centers and saying, do you have a computer lab? Can I teach a computer class? Is that something you need? And they hired me, and I started to teach computer classes as a young 20-something to people who were in their 50s and 60s. And then from there, they would say, well, my computer doesn't do that. And then so I would start going to their homes, and I had basically an on-call computer repair business.
Wow. Nice. And so 2007, so we're pre-iPhone.
Yeah.
It was where laptops were around, but weren't necessarily in every house.
Right. There was a lot of desktops, a lot of emailing, a lot of Word documents being created, mostly emailing, and then like Family Tree Maker, like all these old time programs with the CD-ROM and all that.
Yeah. Oh, amazing. And so I understood that you kept that business till 2016.
Yeah, I had that one for a long time. And my husband actually worked with me in that as well once I got married later on. And
right. And what was, you sold the business. What was your experience of the first business that you sold? I hear often many stories about it being a bit of a nightmare. It depends on who you're selling it to. So who did you sell it to, and how was it?
It was. I will agree. We actually ended up selling it to one of the people we had hired. And we essentially, because it was a very low overhead business, there was no equipment. It was really a knowledge-based business and a client base. We basically sold the client list to our person that was working with us. And he worked that business for several years. And then he eventually moved on to something else as well. But it was good experience. And it also showed me that I'm not a really great large team person. Like I don't grow large teams. That's not where I live in my business world. And also that I didn't want to be a millionaire with 10, locations and all these things. Like that was never going to be the goal. And so once it got to a point where it was too big for me, essentially, that was when I decided this is time for me to step out of this role and do something else. And, doing my own marketing over the years, I'd done so much of my own marketing and done all these different crazy things. And I'd done some marketing in the past for clients, but not really formally. And so in 2017 is when I really beefed up that side of what I was doing, where I was, like I said, doing marketing here and there, but I really decided to make it more of a full-time thing that I would have a marketing agency.
Okay, fantastic. All right, we'll talk about absolute marketing in a minute, but I'm just intrigued by what a marketing minimalist actually is. So can you share a definition, please?
So marketing minimalism really came about from my own experience of having so many people tell you, you should do this, you should do that, you should do these things. And really none of them work as well as they should, or as they say they should, or it doesn't work for everyone. So marketing minimalism is creating all of the marketing pieces that actually work for you without having to go into billions of dollars of spending and in areas you have no expertise in. Because I find a lot of people, they know how to do their own marketing. Maybe the tactic, the program, they have to learn that. But really, they know how to market themselves. They just need to be given permission to do that. And permission to do it minimally without having to say, oh, no, you need all the things, when really you could get by with like 2 or 3 things and be perfectly successful.
So are you, this might be a wrong assumption, are you anti-paid ads as a marketing strategy?
No, I'm anti like stuffing things, right? So doing paid ads and Facebook and the Instagram and LinkedIn and having a website and doing a membership and being on podcasts and having a podcast and like shoving so much in that all you're doing is marketing and you're never actually developing or growing the relationships that you need to, or the, the products you need to develop and any of that. So people get so stuck in those things that I have to develop this because someone asked for it, or I have to move in this direction because someone told me I should, or this guru said it was the next big thing. I have to be on TikTok or whatever. And so they kind of overwhelm themselves with marketing when 2 or 3 of those things would have gotten them perfectly enough clients, helped them grow, given them a steady pace, but they tried to stuff everything in and now nothing's really working.
What's your view on Gary Vaynerchuk?
I do like him. I think he has some interesting ideas. I don't know that all of his ideas are perfect.
Because he's someone who's content creation, put it everywhere, be omnipresent, make sure that you're on every platform for every person of every age, every demographic, every gender, whatever it is. So I'd imagine there are possibly some things that you feel he sort of overcommits to, overemphasizes maybe.
Yeah, so true. And I feel like a lot of gurus do that. There's a lot of them out there. I mean, you could go on. I had actually a client come to me the other day and she said, well, I need to make this membership. It needs to be this price point. I need to do these things and I need to use text marketing. And I said, okay. And then I asked her why. And she really didn't have an answer. She said, well, someone used it and I saw the value and I think it would be good. And I think I could get clients from it. And I said, okay, is that something you can fit into your capacity right now? Well, no, but I feel like I have to do it because I need to make this and I need to do that. And I said, do you have enough clients at this very moment? And are you marketing yourself consistently without adding that? Well, yes, but it's another thing I think I need to do because someone said. And so it was just kind of this thing that she really didn't have an answer that said, I need to do this and I'm not getting clients and I need to add these things. Mm-hmm. It was, well, I need to do it because someone said. And so we talked through it, and some of the pieces might be something she can do in the future or do even relatively soon, but it wasn't this, I have to do it now because someone said so.
Who is your ideal client?
My ideal client is mostly women in business, 3 to 5 years. I have some that are at the 10-year mark, but kind of in that I've been DIYing for a while, but now I'm ready to kind of do something else, but I'm not ready to hire someone in-house yet. So they're in that like middle stage where they're too overwhelmed to do things on their own DIY, but they need to grow, but they can't hire someone yet. And so I'm like this perfect bridge between those two things.
Oh, interesting. So tell me what absolute marketing is. What areas do you prioritize or do you look at mainly?
We'll be back after a quick break. Hi, I'm Alex, the host of X Health Show. Meet the future of healthcare. Think X-Men, that's X Health. Actual superheroes behind programming living cells to cure cancer once and for all. Tech that detects preterm delivery in seconds, brain-computer interface, or apps that employ AI to match you, your disease, with the best treatment. X Health Show brings to you visionaries who push the boundaries of healthcare from Switzerland, the heart of Europe and the most innovative country in the world. Let me introduce you to their startups. Head to X Health Show, meet the future of healthcare. Happy to greet you there.
So I work with these clients to create 1 year of marketing content in 5 days. And
sorry to cut across you. I read this and I'm like, I need this woman in my life. What are you talking about? You can do a year's worth of content in 5 days. Please tell me. Tell me. What's that?
So we have a 5-day process. We actually have 8 separate days that we perform, but we have a 5-day, this is your bare minimum. If you can get this in, you're good. So we create a brand in a day where we also write your opt-in or your ebook that same day. And we're creating brand from scratch, usually. And even if you have a brand, we're working to make sure that it's the right branding, the right colors, that you know what your colors are, you know what your fonts are, all that stuff. That branding people should be giving you that they're not giving out there. Too many people that come to me with a very blurry image, and then we have to redo everything to make sure they have all the pieces. And so then we do that the first day. The second day, we create a website in a day. And websites should not take longer than that. I think a lot of people put too much time and effort into them. That's not necessary. Even large companies, there was a company that had $25 million revenue. They don't need a fancy website. They think they do, but they don't. So there's website in a day, 12 months of social posts in a day, 12 months of blog posts in a day, 12 months of email campaigns in a day. That's also like funnels. And then we also have podcast guesting in a day, podcast hosting in a day. And then we have like a membership in a day session as well.
Okay, something I'm intrigued in because I'm actually just paying for a new company to do a website for me at the moment. Literally, we started last Friday. And to be honest, I'm not spending a load of money, but I'm spending enough that it's like, okay, I'm committed to this now.
Yeah.
And I've had a DIY website for 2 or 3 years now. And I've seen with people commenting that the SEO is starting to work, that the domain is working. When people search for me, it's coming up. And so the SEO is naturally it was just a long-term strategy. It's not paid ads, it's a long-term strategy. But tell me why, are you using a template website? No, you're designing a whole new website.
Yep.
Okay, just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Okay, tell me how you're doing that for a website.
So a lot of it just comes down to, if you were to sit down with me for a day, you could tell me everything that needed to be in it and I could create it.
Okay.
While we're sitting there. A lot of these things, they go back and forth and they, I got to email you this, and do you like that? And can we, do we need to change these things? And what do you think about this copy? A lot of it's not necessary. And a lot of things, we actually had a client that put her website up last year, and she's been using our strategies she did the 5 days. Well, she talked to an SEO expert last week, and they were like, oh, we'll just look at it for you. We'll just take a look. Yeah. And they said, so what are you doing? And she told them, and they said, that's it. And they go, she's like, yeah, that's all I've been doing. And they said, well, your site is actually ranking pretty well. So we could tweak things, but you really don't need us. And she didn't even want to use them. They just offered let us look at it for you.
Yeah.
And so even just doing the website in a day and following a few simple things after that, you can have a really great day.
What about the maintenance of it? Do you maintain it, or do you educate them to maintain?
I educate the client, because a lot of times the maintenance isn't as hefty as people think it is. Yeah. And people that get into things like WordPress, because I used to be a WordPress trainer for 10 years, and I did all the word camps and all that stuff, and I ran groups on it. And I did a ton of sites in WordPress. But what I found is that in this day and age, WordPress is, if you have someone in-house, that's great. If you have someone who's going to maintain it for you and they're going to be part of your ecosystem, perfect. But if you're going to hire that out, it's going to get more expensive and more expensive and more expensive. And even if you do it yourself, there's a lot of things you probably don't know on the technical side about DNS, about hacking, about spam. Not that you don't know anything about that, but most people kind of have an idea. But there's a lot of things that, let's say your site went down today. What would you do about it if you were DIYing the maintenance? So I try to put people into products that don't require that type of maintenance, that are a little bit more user friendly for people who are running businesses that are not web businesses.
So would you recommend one or two products? I'm intrigued now because I've used a few myself, and I've built my own. I've built 3 websites, and yeah, 2 of them are absolutely fine. They tick over on what they need to do, and they do a good job. I'm conscious that I'm building something. I'm asking these people to build is in WordPress. I've asked them to educate me as well, so that I can do the maintenance. But yeah, what sort of products do you offer, or do you share with people that on websites?
Well, I actually have an entire suite of products that I use.
Okay.
And they are all listed on my website for free.
Okay,
so
great.
You can go to our website and find them for free.
Okay.
And there's fantastic. Like a whole list of them.
Okay, fantastic. All right. How does automation impact your business and your client's business?
It's huge. It is everything. The automation that we do is so life-changing for the people that we put it in for. And it's not anything fancy. We're not doing anything that anybody else couldn't do. It's just the way that we see things. When we look at them, when I look at them, I can put together the puzzle pieces. I had a client who was doing a 10-step process every single week for one event. Well, turns out with automation, and it was just about listening to her process and looking at where she could automate, we took that down to 2 steps, and she only had to do it like once a month.
Right.
So it was such a difference for her in the number of hours she was spending. It was insane. So that kind of stuff, automation for me is not just like, oh, look, how can we get it off our plate? And like, let's just not have to do anything so we can be lazy. It's how can we get this off our plate? Because this is not necessary. We don't get paid. We get paid too much an hour, right? Like as a person, like if you think about what your hourly rate is as a business owner, you get paid too much an hour to do some of these tasks.
Yeah.
And you could get a VA to do them. But like I said, a lot of my clients that are in this space, they're in that in between. They're not quite doing enough to have a VA or quite doing enough to have, somebody who can be there in-house and be there with them all the time. Yeah. But they're kind of DIYing still, and it's taking away time for when they should be doing those, working on those relationships and building those business products.
Excellent. And you talk about building relationships. So networking is obviously quite pivotal, quite important to you. What role does it play for your specific business?
I network a lot, and I network even when I go on vacation. I network when I am out at the store, but I do go to like 2 or 3 networking events a week. If I can find them locally. Yeah. And I don't do a lot of online networking. I don't find it very effective. So I try to find real in-person events. And as far as like the impact it's had on my business, well, I actually networked in 2012 to 2013. I networked 3 times a day, every single day for 1 year.
Wow.
And it was a lot.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. And it was breakfast, lunch, and dinner kind of thing. And I became one of the most well-known people in the city that I live in. And I attribute a lot of my success to really pushing the boundary of what is networking and how can I do it more. And I know that was an extreme example because I like to do these extreme experiments in my business, but it was very helpful to show me that, yes, networking is worth it. Now, did I increase my bottom line at that time? Of course. But what I increased more were the relationships I had in the community. And I had somebody call me the other day and say, hey, I know I haven't ever talked to you before, but I saw you 5 years ago do a talk on XYZ. 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. I had no idea that would come back around. I just did the talk, and probably I did it for free because that's how I am. But, those kinds of things really come back to you. So I really put a lot of emphasis on networking and speaking for sure, and also podcasting, except when my fire alarm's going off and annoying me.
It's fun, isn't it? It's not affecting the audio. I don't think it's fun. So I believe as an entrepreneur that networking is really important as well. For the people that who are listening or watching, so what's the art form or even the science? What's the way of making the most of networking for yourself?
When I first started, I thought it was to get, every single person, like meet as many people as possible, get all the cards, meet all the people, and then you're out of there, right? Once you've met everyone, you're done. But what I learned over that year and even after the fact is that there are 2 or 3 really good people in a group of 20, 30. And if you can find those 2 or 3 people, even if you don't think you're talking to them, you probably are. Like sometimes you're talking to someone and you're like, okay, this is going nowhere. We can't help each other. I don't know where this could go in the future. I don't think they know anyone I need, and I don't know anyone they need. And you're kind of looking at it this pessimistic way. Those are some of the most interesting conversations I've had, because I try not to just say, oh, well, okay, what do you do? And where's your business? And what's, how'd you get started or whatever, but really actually talking about, well, where's your favorite place to go on vacation? And do you have a house? And how long have you lived there? And those kinds of things, just talking to people about life, like where do you go to church, even things like that, can really bring about actual friendships that lead to almost like these ambassadors for life.
Yeah.
And then they might even become clients in the future. I've had that happen where I've become friends with someone, or they were a client and then we become friends. And I actually have a client friend who is no longer owning a business now, but we've been friends for 7 years and we take vacations together. And like, it's one of those people that, I met randomly and for a minute in a busy networking event. And now we've been friends for 7 years. So that's how I find that there's like a science to it or an art form to it of not discounting anyone you've met for any reason until you kind of prove out the theory that, okay, yeah, that wasn't a connection that was necessary, if that makes sense. So really making sure you give that relationship all the opportunity it can have until it kind of proves itself to be maybe not one that would serve you right now.
It's really interesting you say that because so I was in corporate for 14 years. And so leaving corporate and doing my own thing, I do property and real estate, I do coaching, I do podcasting, I've got a podcast business. And I've tried, and they're not always successful, but I've tried to keep relationships with the corporate people. Not that they will be my client per se. It's not really they're not really going to be my clients because they are. If I did career coaching, it might be useful, but I steer clear of that. I was in there for too long to help people on that. But I've kept relationships open and access, because you never know. One of them might leave and start their own business. One of them might move to a small company that needs whatever coaching or podcasting, whatever. So when people make career changes, a lot of the people just go, right, that whatever period that 5 years of my life in X is not relevant to me now, and therefore I'm just going to stop the relationships. But actually, as you say, if you spend some time with people, you get to know them, you get to know their kids, you get to know what their interests are. So when I was doing research on you, looking at your website and things like, you were talking about the depth of the relationships is more important. I think that's what you've brought through so far. But just on that, if people are making that change in their career, lifestyle, whatever, should they cut off people?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't believe that. But I don't think you need to necessarily put in as much time, right? Cool. So the time you spend, you only have a finite amount of it. And especially for networking, you probably have maybe an hour or two a week. And so I try to make that time really intentional. And I've had colleagues also say, oh, you should talk to this person and you should have a call with them and all that. I'll have a 15-minute call with just about anybody.
Right.
Like anybody, even today that was listening and they said, I'm going to book a call with her. I'll talk to you for 15 minutes. But in that 15 minutes, doing those calls over and over and over, I've honed this really tight list of questions and even like intuition feelings of when I'm talking to someone in that 15 minutes, I'll know whether we need to continue the relationship, whether we need to I need to dive a little deeper and we need to have a longer conversation, or if at the end of the 15 minutes, yeah, that's great. It was so nice to meet you. Maybe we can work together in the future. Have a nice day.
Yeah.
And so even if it's a prospective client, even if it's a colleague, even if it's somebody who is just curious about, marketing minimalism or anything like that, I'll talk to them. And some of those conversations have gone on well beyond the 15 minutes, well into like the hour mark, because the relationship was being built there. But then I've had other conversations last about 9 or 10 minutes. And we both know at the end of that, we're kind of done here, Yeah. And so I don't think you have to cut anybody off. And I don't think you should burn any bridges. Sure. But definitely you don't have to put the extra time in. And it's okay to say, okay, we're done here. And the other person probably will agree.
Yeah. You describe yourself as unconventional. Why do you call yourself unconventional?
Well, my in-a-day method is definitely unconventional. The power days are frowned upon in the established marketing community.
What's a power day?
That's the one-day sessions that I do.
Oh, okay. Right, yeah. Right, okay.
And so they're frowned upon only because traditional marketers think that it does take longer to build a website. It does take longer to build a brand. And unfortunately, I don't agree with them. And so I find that I'm in this kind of the edge of the mainstream. I'm not quite so far out in the, crazy town that I'm like way out there where no one knows what I'm doing. And I'm just like so far out, but I'm out there enough that the mainstream marketers find me very much competition because I'm doing something so different, but also they don't understand what I do. Mm-hmm. And so, and I don't like give it away either. Like, I'm just like, well, it's a power day. I don't know what else to tell you. It's 8 hours with me. But it's definitely something that I've found. I've been a little bit ostracized by the mainstream marketing community. When I've been at a networking event or I've spoken about it, I've gotten a lot of very skeptical looks and questions and a lot of probes about, well, tell me the strategy and tell me exactly how you do it. I want step by step. And I say, well, if you want that, we can do a power day, but I'm going to just tell you my process.
Yeah, that's interesting because it's sort of the way these marketing agencies justify themselves is by having a long drawn out process.
Yeah.
It's not just marketing. It happens all the time in the big four. You justify your fees by, well, we go in depth for days, weeks, months. So it's actually quite refreshing to hear that you can set up a marketing strategy in a week. I think it's great. And if you've got results to show that, I think all power to you. I think just keep doing what you're doing, even if it is unconventional. Who cares? You've got a nice little business. And so on the you said earlier that you don't want an empire. You don't want a huge business with 20 locations across the US. So what is the makeup of your team? How many, is it just you, or do you have VAs? Do you have PAs? Do you have an admin? Do you have finance people? How do you organize your business?
So I have one senior advisor, and I have like somebody who kind of is on the large decision end of things, just to like have that bounce off person, more of like a board member, but a non-paid, helpful board member. And then I have 2 VAs that I use. And mostly I use them we have maintenance plans. We do help people on a monthly basis, that kind of thing, for random things. And so I have them help me with that kind of work. And then some of our power days have some elements that kind of roll into possibly a second day, but instead of charging my client for that, I end up just paying my VAs to help finish off something that maybe was a little bit longer than the 8 hours. And I want to do that for the client as my part of my obligation to finish the project. So we might have 2 or 3 hours left of something to finish. The client doesn't need to be there for it. And so we just finish on our, by that next day for them. So I do that kind of stuff. And then it's me, and I'm answering the emails. And if you call me, I'm answering the phone and, that kind of thing. So, I never saw it as being an empire. And the reason is I had someone tell me I could franchise this and I could have these coaches all over the country and all this stuff. But I've actually had marketers come to me, do a power day, use it on a client they had, right? So they get a client, they come to me with the client's information, and then I treat them as if they were just a regular old client.
Right.
And I charge them the same, and I train them. I teach them what the same thing I would teach a client.
Right.
And I've had them go out and do their own version of that. And that's what I want. I want to fundamentally change the industry. I've done that here locally with the networking and how I did networking and how I ran groups and the way that people networked here before I got here and started changing things in Jacksonville. And I saw that change just because I was the example of that.
Yeah.
But my whole goal with the business of marketing is to fundamentally change the way that people view marketing and to go back to some traditional ideas without going back to this traditional method that is really holding a lot of people back, I feel. And there are so many more DIY things. It's kind of like marrying the traditional idea of what marketing was way back in the day, talking like Sears and Roebuck days, right? Like the old ads when they send you a catalog, marrying that with the technology we have now.
Yeah.
And there's so many ways to do that. There's so many opportunities to do that. And people even say to me, like, you're going to actually teach me what you do, like in the day, you're going to tell me everything you're doing so that I can do it next year by myself. So like the social media day, I want that person to come in this year, sit with me for one day, pay the fee and just do one time. And if they're committed enough, if they really want this and they know that it's going to work for them, then they'll be able to pick up what I say this year and do it next year, or teach someone on their team to do it next year. That's what I want. Do people come back to me every year? Yeah, I love that. That's great. I love working with people again. But my goal is to make you not have to come back if you don't need to. Like, I want to train you enough so that you can train someone else, or so that you can do this on your own.
Amazing. What a refreshing idea. So what's the plans for the next 2 to 5 years for you?
I would like to travel to more clients. I do some traveling to clients. I'm going to Maryland next week, and I'm going to Ohio in a few weeks after that. I would just like to see more of the country and my country, and also maybe other countries in the future. By going to clients, I love traveling to them and being in their element and helping them, like seeing where they are and kind of getting a little bit more about them rather than having them come to me. Because all of our power days are in person. We don't do any virtual days.
Don't do anything online at all.
Nothing virtual. And there's a very specific reason for that. There's so much that comes through when you're sitting with a person in person. If we were sitting at a table right now, like actually face to face, I would be able to tell if you were nervous, if your leg was bouncing, or if your stomach was growling, if you were hungry, all these things. Like I would pick up on these other cues that you wouldn't get in a virtual session. And when I'm sitting with a client and they're telling me, yes, everything looks good, but their knee is bouncing up and down on the floor, I'm saying, I'm not quite sure I believe you. But if we're in a virtual session, I never get to see that or understand that. So I feel that in-person sessions are really important. And so I'd love to travel more. And also I'd love to speak more. I speak a lot already, but like I said, my whole goal with this is to really share what I'm doing and share the formulas and the process, because I'm not hiding it under a bushel. It's proprietary, but it's not, I want people to learn it. So that's my goal for the next couple years.
Amazing. Okay, we're coming to the end of the interview. I asked the same 6 questions to all of my guests. They're quick fire questions. They don't need a quick fire answer. First one is, what's the best decision that you made?
To start my business, for sure.
Nice, clean, brilliant. What's the best piece of advice you've been given?
You don't need everything you think you do.
Okay. And that's what you
was actually, it's the minimalism thing, right?
Yeah,
so I was actually, in 2020, I watched a video on YouTube by Dawn from The Minimal Mom, and I just randomly came across it. And she basically said, do you really need that egg slicer that's in your kitchen, or could you just use the knife you already own? And I thought it was brilliant, because there are so many little things we own that do the same job as so many other things that we own for other reasons. like having a knife to cut an egg rather than a very specific egg slicer that takes up 3 times as much room and is twice as hard to clean. And do you really need that? And some people say, yes, I really need that. And she said, that's okay if you do, but then something else probably needs to go because everyone owns too much stuff. And so when I started applying that to my life, I started applying that to my business. And I can tell you, I've been happier, less stressed, and actually been more effective and more productive, and even had more sales than previously.
So you hold minimalism throughout your life, do you?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because I started watching, there's a thing on Netflix, which is about minimalism. And I started watching it and I didn't complete it. And actually, after speaking to you, I think I'm going to go back and revisit that documentary because it is really interesting. But as a advocate and a lover of tech, I've got bits of tech everywhere. It was that now you talked about it. It makes a normal Joe like me feel quite uncomfortable when someone challenges you, as you just like the egg is like it's like buying grated cheese. I don't get why you buy grated cheese. You get cheese and a grater, and why do you have to pay another X pounds or dollars for the grated cheese? So I do get that, but as a normal Joe that likes a bit of tech and everything, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable because it challenges you to actually think, do you actually need that? Not even want. Do you actually need it? So I'd advise it. Is there anything what was the thing that you promoted us people to listen to? Because I think we should all watch this, even if we come to the conclusion it's not for us. Yeah. But as I said, that Netflix, there's a documentary on Netflix, so check that out. I can't remember what it's called, but something minimalism. Is there any books, any audio books, or anything that you would advise people to they want to tap into?
Yes, there's actually several. There's 3, I think 2 or 3. The first one was actually one of the things I did in my business. One of the first like minimalism things I did in my business, which was read Profit First.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
That book is basically money minimalism for your business, but then I took that and I applied it to my personal life as well.
Right.
So kind of the Dave Ramsey idea, but from like the Profit First side of things. So that was the first thing. Getting the finances in order was the first. But I was still a spender. I was still buying, everything under the sun. I'm still, a tech person. I've still got like all the things, right? But what I started doing was I started watching Dawn from the Minimal Mom. It's on YouTube.
Okay.
And she has a book that's Declutter Your House in 15 Minutes a Day. And the book wasn't out when I started, but I literally watched every video she did. I would watch one video. And then I would go and do it. So she said, I want you to clean out this drawer. And that was what the video was about. I went and cleaned out that drawer. And then I did this cabinet. And then I did the bathroom. And then I was doing whole rooms at a time. And then I started over because minimalism is an onion effect. It's not about decluttering and clearing things out and, okay, we're good now. Because you're constantly bringing things into your home and your life is constantly changing and your needs and your wants are constantly changing, right? So she says it's an onion effect. You might go through that drawer now and say, I think 10 items is good in here. And then you're going to go through the drawer again next month and go, 5 items is as much as I can mentally handle right now. Right. And then next month you might say, no, I really need 6 in here. I need to add this one back, right? So there's this idea that minimalism is not a like a once and done thing, or it's not some kind of lifestyle that says you can only have 1 cup and 1 plate and 1 fork. It's saying that it's a lifestyle journey, and whatever you need today may not be what you need tomorrow. But you're going to function for today and then see what tomorrow brings and see how you can function in that as well.
It's really interesting. My wife sort of holds that. She's not a minimalist at all. She has her fair share of things, but she does sort of say when you buy something, well, then something needs to go out, sort of 1 in, 1 out. And sort of that's her mentality. And it has been an interesting experience with that. So I would definitely advise listen and watch those things. Okay, the next question: who's helped you most in your career?
I would say there was a professor I had at university, and he was one of the computer programming teachers, and his name was Mark Thomas, and I was so frustrated. He was so nice. I was so frustrated because I was this only girl in the class. I was doing very poorly in some of the programming languages that were not coming as naturally to me as the other ones. And he would just come to me each time I would get a bad grade or I would do really bad on a quiz. He would say, "Did you try?" And I would be like almost crying, like, "Yes, I tried. I don't know what else to do." And he said, "Do you think you could do better?" And I was like, "I don't know. I tried really hard." And he goes, "Then you have to do that again. You have to look at your mistakes and try again." And so then I would do a little better on the test, but it still wasn't great. But he would just keep encouraging me, like, if you're trying your hardest, this might not be the thing for you, but in this particular circumstance, you must complete this class. As long as you pass this class, then you can move forward. But he was saying, once you try something and you've worked really hard at it, it's okay to let it go and say, "I can't, that's not for me. It's time to cut this off." And of course, in university, you just have to do what they tell you and finish the class, right? But he was saying it as like a life lesson that when things aren't working, reevaluate and say, is this something that I need to be doing? Is this something that's going to work for obviously it's not working because it's going horribly. And so I've really taken that throughout my career and said, when I've built a business because I've built many, or I've built a product, or I've created something that I thought was going to be great, or I thought was, it was really difficult, but I made it, and then no one buys it, or I'm trying to create a business that no one wants to buy from. It wasn't that I could look at that failure and go, okay, well, I'm just a horrible business owner. Forget this stuff. It was, this thing is not working. I tried my best. I tried again. I might have tried a third time even, and it's still not working. It's okay to cut it loose. And so that was really great advice for me. And it wasn't really in the same context, but I feel like he meant it as more than just a test and a quiz, application.
Amazing. What a great man. Do you have any regrets?
Honestly, I was divorced at 20. I was married at 20 and divorced at 20. And I think that if I had listened to some of the people that were around at the time and they were like, "Don't do it," I probably would have taken them up on that. That would have been like my one, like maybe a regret sort of. But I can tell you that the person I was before I got married to that first person and the person I am now, that divorce shaped everything for me. It actually made me more confident. It helped me to grow spiritually. It helped me to grow emotionally. And nobody wants to go through that. I don't recommend it. It's not fun.
Not a life lesson we should all be promoting.
No, it's not. You should get a divorce just so you can learn things. But I can definitely say that even if I had the chance to go back, I don't know if I would change that, because I know myself that I wouldn't be as confident, or I wouldn't have all these things that I have now growing from that experience. Yeah. So, I don't really look back and say, "Oh, I would have changed this," or "I should have done that." Even businesses that failed, I think, well, I could use that money now. Like, that'd be great to have that cash in the bank and not have it have failed a business. But even that I've learned something from. So everything that happens to me, even if it's maybe a regret, "Oh, I shouldn't have done that," I regret it maybe for a minute, in the context of things. And then I think, "Oh, actually, I learned something from this. And now I know not to buy the pair of stilettos that I can't walk in." So, that kind of thing.
What are you most proud of?
My businesses, for sure. But I think I'm most proud of my second marriage, the marriage I have now. I've been married for 10 years. And we have come through some really tough times financially, relationship wise. And we have both come out of that not in a, "Oh, well, let's just get divorced. It's too hard," right? We both have really committed to it. And I'm really proud of where we are now. And I also think that I've grown so much from having someone to check and balance me and to challenge me in some cases. And so I'm really proud that we've both taken our own spiritual journeys and put them together as one. And we've been able to grow as people and in our relationship together. So I think my marriage is probably my most number one, but my business is a really close second.
Okay, good. What does legacy mean to you?
I want people to learn the absolute marketing method, and I want them to teach other people, and I want them to teach other people. And that's what the legacy is to me. I don't care if I ever make $1 million. That's not the goal. I want people to learn this so that they can have that freedom that I've experienced from being able to develop it.
Amazing. And where can people find you if they want to reach out to you?
They can go to getabsolutemarketing.com, and my podcast is there, Marketing Minimalism, and also the free list of all the resources I use. Literally everything that I use in my own business and for my clients is listed there for free.
Amazing. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you so much.